One last thing I want to ask, because it's something that I personally am very interested in. It's an exercise we're doing at one of my clients is pricing and packaging. And for self-serve, it's much easier. It was like, okay, like per user, like $5 per user, $10 per user, pro plan, maybe like $20 per, like it feels like a lot more straightforward versus enterprise pricing and packaging. It feels like a much involved process. And how do you price this? And like, how do people think about the value of enterprise? Like, what have you gone through in pricing and packaging in this PLG to SLG evolution?
So I'll be honest. I am not a pricing and packaging expert. I think there are a lot of product marketers out there who are very, very good at this. It's almost like an analyst partial, like you're almost like an analyst as well as a product marketing person. So at Airtable, we ended up hiring like a external firm to help us with this, and they exist out there, and they're pricey. Like here's. Again, I'm not an expert, so take this with a grain of salt. But I think of like packaging and pricing as like what problem are you solving that warrants a higher price point? Like so like if you think about like a journey, right? Like you want a customer to upgrade and you want them to spend more with you, but if they're going to spend more with you, then you need to be solving a equivalent or proportional level of pain for that company, right? And so I think like with this user-based pricing, like you want them to upgrade. Maybe there's different levels, right? Like, well, like I guess in the Salesforce world, you just keep adding more for like different clouds, right? But it's like like start with the value you're creating and figure out what is that value, and then how do you price against that instead of like I think if you start there, then you can figure out the right ranges for pricing and also the right gating for features. Like I think if you come from an angle from like the PLG angle, you're thinking about like what can I gate to force them to have a like it's almost like how can we put something somewhere where it forces them to have to pay us more or something. Like and you're trying to figure out like, well, like where is that like least annoying for a power user who won't be angry and go to the community and complain about something like, oh, why can't I do this? Like if it like certain features, right? Like it's always hard. Like I'll give like for example, I think in the Airtable realm, like the Salesforce integration is enterprise, because there's no reason why like a very small mom and pop shop of like 10 people would ever need a Salesforce. Like those things are obvious, right? You want to gate, but it's like price at the point of value, and think about what problems, if you're asking them to spend more, what bigger problem are you solving for them, and how much is that problem worth to them to solve? That's like my angle. And then obviously you want the experts to come in and they do all this analysis of like you want them to analyze like price point against adoption of certain features. Like you almost see like I bet if you look at your data, you could see which features were being used more regularly by certain segments, and you might identify patterns there, right? And then you're gonna have to draw a line somewhere and do like some sort of ARR sacrifice. Like I would just say like, I've always felt like be generous, like give more functionality, and be willing to sacrifice some ARR if the goal is to drive more adoption of your product, to drive more expansion. And to not be cheap, like don't be cheap with the features, right? And again, I'm not an expert here, so but that's my sort of point of view when I look at pricing packaging.
Yeah. Like I think also a lot of people think pricing is permanent. It is not. Right? It's okay to change your pricing. It's okay to like launch something and see how that impacts our bottom line or how user reacts to it, and then change it 6 months later. Like we're like, especially for tech companies and people are used to it, you want to be conscious on like, okay, when we change pricing, how do we deal with the existing users? Do we grandfather them in? Do we, keep like set a later date that they can also transfer? So you need to think through the transition plan, but you can change. So and also at different stages of company, you want to change. So pricing is something that every company is asking for, especially with a lot of the AI companies, and I deal with a lot of like how do we do pricing today? But my advice is always like, okay, let's do a survey, let's do customer interviews, and let's look at the usage data of feature adoption to understand what's the trigger for a higher level of pricing, and then we can always change 6 months later, 12 months later.
Yeah. And in the enterprise realm, they're going to discount it anyway. Like there's going to be some big discounts that get approved. I think I'm not, PLG pricing is I'm not an expert. And the enterprise side, I would just say there's going to be a huge discount range depending on how much they're willing to spend and all that stuff, right? There's so this requires a big, deep expertise. And, but I always go back to, if you're going to ask someone to spend more, what bigger problem or what more valuable problem or additional problem are you solving? And how valuable is that to the customer? Like how much are they spending today? And you can do that math, right? But you need to understand how much the customer is actually spending or opportunity cost, losing for that. So, yeah.